Nuclear attack? Here? Well, not these farms and forests and small towns. Surely not split-level subdivisions and shopping centers. And that's most of my county. But no man is an island. No place is completely isolated. And you have to assume that nuclear strikes on the United States, wherever they might land, would result in a widespread fallout, shifting as the wind shifts in the pattern prevailing at that time of the year, which means that just about everybody would be affected, I'd say, including my county, that boot-shaped piece of the map. Of course, it's unthinkable, unlikely, but not impossible. The entire area could be blanketed by radioactive fallout. Every man, woman, and child in the county could be exposed. Where would they go? What would they do? For a long while, I didn't know. I'm the senior elected official here, but I just didn't know. That man there coming out of the elevator, that's our civil defense director. A first-rate appointment, if I do say so myself. Retired bird colonel. Fine record. Completely dedicated to his job. The younger man meeting him, the one who looks like an expert, is an expert from the Regional Office of Civil Defense. Well, I've been asking those two for some straight answers. Seems to me I started asking months ago.
We can't give you answers, John. We don't have them.
Well, what's the story? Every man for himself, head for the hills?
No, you know better than that, John. We want to work out a real plan. A careful, orderly, detailed plan that will serve the whole...
Please.
Huh?
Now, you people are always working out plans. What else do you do?
This is brand new, Commissioner. A thoroughly tested, completely developed program. And its purpose is to be specific about the exact thing you're talking about.
Look, Mr. Ross, I've seen dozens of these. Bill, when was it? 2-3 years ago? Those bright young men with the slide rules and clipboards?
The shelter survey teams, Donald. What about them, John?
Well, what were they? Engineers, architects?
Oh, both.
You had them going through basements and attics all over the county. 2 of them walked in here one day, stood looking at my window. They didn't say much. They just stood there, very glum. Then they walked out again, shaking their heads and muttering to themselves. Now, what was all that about? Wasn't it part of a plan?
No, sir, it was a survey. The National Fallout Shelter Survey, which is currently being updated. OCD is supplementing the National Fallout Shelter Survey with the Smaller Structure Survey and the technique for evaluating fallout protection in private houses. But we're talking about the Community Shelter Planning Program.
Holy cow.
Oh, John, don't be too hard on us. We have to know the facts before we can figure out what to do with them. That's basic in any good plan. Ask your own planner.
Well, Charlie?
Oh, I'm sorry. Get my kicks off these things.
Bill suggests you're a fact finder first and a planner second.
True enough. Sure. How else can I get my work done?
Say, that's a very good chart. Well thought out. Thank you. We think so, too.
Well, I suggest to Bill that there comes a point when fact-finding stops and decisions are made.
I agree.
When you finally settle on precisely what actions you want people to take.
Absolutely.
When you tell them in the plainest language possible. If the whistle blows, you ought to do this, you ought to go there.
But we are not at that point now.
Why not, Bill? You know where the shelters are.
Some of them, most of them, probably.
Well, what else do you need?
Where the people are, Commissioner. Not only where they live, that's no real problem, but where they work, where they play, where they go to school, where they shop. Because people living normal lives just don't stay put. Let's take an example. This courthouse itself. Right now it's crowded. Streets outside are busy. If there were an attack now, everyone could find shelter in the building. Maybe not here, but in the halls, in the basements, in the courtrooms. Am I right, Bill?
Yes, Donald. That wing is built around a central core, one cylinder inside the other. There's fallout protection inherent in the architect's design.
So you see, you have plenty of room, already surveyed and marked. Enough for several thousand people.
3,000. Surveyed and marked and stocked.
But if an attack came, say, 10, 12 hours from now, the courthouse would be of no use to many of these people. They'd be in their homes, miles away.
That's absolutely right. As a matter of fact, no one in this room lives within walking distance of the courthouse.
Well, that's true.
And that's typical. Oh, for some, there would be other public shelter they could get to in time tonight, but not for all. And we want to find out who goes where.
And who would have no place to go.
Believe me, it won't be easy. It'll take months of hard work by a professional planner. Maps, studies, detailed reports, analyzing population patterns by day and by night, matching them to the present distribution of shelter, working out the most likely ways to get to shelter. And then you'll be just about ready to complete the first step in our program.
First step?
First of 6 steps, John. They've got the whole thing laid out in 6 easy steps. These guys are really thorough.
Well, Mr. Parker, they're logical steps, I think. Shelter allocation won't be worth much unless you set up a procedure for informing the people about it in the plainest language possible. Then you look ahead to determine where your gaps are between supply and potential demand. You decide what's to be done about filling that gap. Finally, you implement the plan. Again, this won't work unless everyone concerned with it knows his part in it. Not only the people in the Civil Defense Office, but policemen, firemen, engineering and public health, you name it. So, step number 5, you issue directives to these departments requiring them to present a supporting plan. And step number 6, you give official sanction to all this by adopting it formally, either by executive order or legislation, whatever your statutes call for.
Now, Mr. Ross, you're talking about a lot of time and money.
Well, if you agree it's worth your time, we'll agree to provide the money, the Office of Civil Defense.
You mean matching funds?
No, sir. In a county this size, it's 100% federal funding.
John, we can make good use of those population surveys. I mean, if they're willing to pay for them, why
The
not?
thought has already occurred to me, Charlie. But I'm not sure I understand what the immediate product would be.
Community shelter plan.
No. The first step. What would we get out of all this work?
Oh, an allocation of public shelter presently available.
Who goes where?
Yes, but the other side of it, Bill, those without public shelter. When would we know that?
Well, you'd have a pretty good idea by the end of step 1, but I can
Step 3 is a complete analysis of shelter deficit.
Yes, I can give you the picture right now. Look, John, I've got a stack of these things in my office, one for each jurisdiction. They list all the space turned up by the surveys in this county. As of today, John, we have shelter that meets federal criteria for roughly 20% of our population. Oh, the new surveys will add to this, I'm sure, and we can stretch our capacity one way or another. Well, suppose we can double it, make it 40%, even 50%. That still leaves half the county not provided for.
Which half, Bill?
Well, let us go to work, John, then we'll find out. Then we'll do something about it.
How do we start?
By negotiating a contract with the government. Meanwhile, if you'll pick out a man to run the project for you, we'll send him to school for an intensive course in community shelter planning.
Sure. Charlie?
I came home with a bag full of new skills, practical stuff, the nuts and bolts of matching up people and shelter. That was one thing I got out of the course. The other was a sense of urgency. Now, a shelter plan is like any plan for a community. The basic tool is a map. You begin with the land itself and the use people put it to. Then area by area, in every village, every neighborhood, you get down to the hard business of allocating whatever space is available. Naturally, you need guidelines here, policy decisions, so you set up a citizens committee to help you. The help you need is very specific. How much time do we allow for movement? Half an hour? An hour? When you get down to it, how far should we expect people to walk in an hour? 4 miles or more? 2 miles or less? Another thing, if people use their cars, what's a good average speed on a busy road in an emergency?
You also need all the technical advice you can muster. Information techniques, for instance. How to get the word out. The problem is twofold. One, tell people about the shelter plan now. Two, if trouble threatens, be ready to tell them again. In every medium, from spot announcements, transcribed and live, to newspaper ads, publicity releases, and folders, including an individual information map for distribution by mail or by hand. The instructions must be easy to follow. The format simple enough for production and quantity. As for the cost of production, OCD picks up the tab here, too. Some of the general information on civil defense belongs here, I think. Particularly the directions for improvising shelter at home, where that must be the answer.
I want better answers. Now, Bill, you can't tell me every one of these houses gives adequate protection against fallout.
No, John, but you get some protection, and some is better than none. In a house with a basement, the protection could be as good as in a public shelter. Usually it's a simple matter, calling for little or no work. Nothing that interferes with normal use of the basement. You might increase protection in the best corner by filling in the space between ceiling joists with heavy material, or just lay a door across two chests. The more weight you spread on top of the door, even books and newspapers, the greater the protection. There's always something you can do.
Bill, I still want better answers. I still want better answers.
Well, this may be one. At least it will improve the ventilation in some of our public shelters. Many of them could greatly increase their capacity if only the air were better. You see how this thing works, John? It's really very ingenious. It's a sort of an exhaust fan, really. Works on electricity, of course.
But suppose the power fails.
Well, then, mister, you just get on your bicycle.
Are you sure there isn't space your people have missed?
I'm sure. You know that old tunnel through the ridge?
The railroad tunnel, of course.
We even checked that out.
Well, what could be better? It's a half-mile long and solid rock.
We might use it, John. 4,000 people could stay there, if they could only get there. Of course, these places should be stocked. And you can't keep supplies in a tunnel that's 1 track wide, so we've got a problem here. In this business, you just can't assume anything, Don. This supermarket was a shocker for me. And the other stores at the shopping center.
Why?
No real shelter anywhere. Slab foundation, so there's nothing below ground. Hollow wall construction, so there's no density to speak of. Protection close to zero.
But what about all those people?
And what about all the kids in some of our schools? They're no better off. Not when walls are made of windows, entrances lead straight into corridors, and nothing serves as a shield or baffle against radiation. John, do you realize that of the 2,000 students and teachers in this high school, 17 could find decent shelter in one little storeroom? 25 would be a crowd.
Still, Charlie, there's nothing here that isn't just plain common sense.
People have been known to resist common sense, haven't they, John?
Let's wait until they do, shall we? Frankly, I don't expect that at all. Charlie, you don't seem to realize it, but you've done a magnificent job here. The best possible use of every resource we have.
I thank you. But for half the county, what does it amount to? What answers do we have for the people in your shopping center or the kids in my school? Go home, we tell them. Get home as fast as you can. If you're lucky, if we can keep the traffic moving, you might make it in time.
In time at least to improvise something. 6 months ago, you couldn't have told them that much.
Yes, that's right, Arnold. And 6 months from now, well, a year, Charlie, 2 years at the most, we'll have substantially more shelter available in the county. That's part of the plan. As a matter of fact, John, that's one of the things that I want to take up at the meeting today. I want to show just how easily this can be done. Well, look, for example, suppose you're constructing a building made out of hollow blocks like this one. You simply fill the holes in the blocks with sand or gravel.
Well, what's the point?
You increase the density, John, and density protects you from radiation. The cost, of course, is very low, particularly if you limit it to one area of the building. Now, here's another one. In this floor plan, the radiation can flow in an uninterrupted path from the entrance straight down the corridor.
Like Charlie's school.
Yes, exactly. But if you offset the entrance like so, you form an effective baffle, and radiation can't travel straight down the corridor. That's a matter of design, which costs nothing.
We've developed dozens of these techniques, and most of them are inexpensive, provided they're incorporated at the drawing board stage.
Yes, Don, that's right. That's why we're proposing an ordinance. Where is it? I know we had some copies
Right there at the end of the table, Bill.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, here it is. Shelters in public structures. The effect of this ordinance, John, will be to require this kind of foresight in the design of every new public building in the county. Certainly in every school.
Well, that makes sense.
Yes, it does. But will they listen?
Wouldn't it be nice if these things could be left to the infinite wisdom of the county administration? But they can't be. Government is parceled out among 54 local jurisdictions and a dozen school boards. And these people don't take kindly to demands or decrees or directives. No, but I can get them to listen. In fact, that's half of what I do around here. The other half, I listen. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a plan.